Welcome to Clarity, a podcast powered by the Thomson Reuters Institute. I'm Zach Warren, the Institute's Technology and Innovation Insights lead. In each episode, we dive deep into a single question from decision makers and thought leaders from legal, corporate, tax accounting and audit, and government communities. In today's episode, we discuss the big question: can traditional fraud detection keep up with crypto criminals? Think back a few years and cryptocurrency was built on staying anonymous, with its main selling point being the ability to conduct financial transactions off the grid. Today, however, the crypto space has transformed, with institutional investment, changing privacy features, and increased regulation all driving mainstream approval. But with legitimacy comes new tactics for crypto criminals, such as new vulnerabilities in automated trading systems and exploitations of crypto ATMs. So how are those on the front lines of fraud detection keeping up with the new world of cryptocurrency crime? Today, TRI's Rabihah Butler speaks with Marc Evans, founder of Fraud Hero Cybercrimes Detective, and Seth Sattler, who has spent years as a chief compliance officer, about the emerging fraud trends they've seen, the effectiveness of traditional fraud prevention methods, and if we need entirely new frameworks to stay ahead of the crypto criminal curve.
Hi, I'm Rabihah Butler with Thomson Reuters Institute, and I'm here with Marc Evans and Seth Sattler. Today we'll be tackling the question on a lot of minds: can traditional fraud detection keep up with the crypto criminals? While we're here with our experts, my inner lawyer feels compelled to tell you that these are experts speaking from their own experiences, giving their own thoughts and opinions. These opinions are not official opinions of any of their employers or anyone that they've been associated with. They are, however, incredibly brilliant and worth paying attention to. With that being said, it's pretty obvious that the world of crypto is evolving at lightning speed, and with that evolution comes new challenges, especially in the realm of fraud and security. What was once a space built on anonymity is now seeing significant shifts driven by changing privacy features and the growing impact of regulation. This journey towards mainstream legitimacy is both exciting and concerning, but it also opens new doors for a sophisticated type of criminal activity. In this episode, we will try to unravel some of these complexities and the nuance of fraud detection in the crypto space. We'll be exploring everything from concerning and emerging fraud trends, which would be things like vulnerabilities in automated trading and crypto ATMs, to how risk distributed across different players and the ecosystem overall. We're also going to challenge the effectiveness of traditional fraud prevention and those frameworks and ask whether they truly are adapting fast enough or if we need new frameworks to stay ahead of the curve. So get ready for this thought-provoking discussion as we explore how to anticipate and prevent fraud in ever-evolving tactics. And let's dive in. Seth, Marc, welcome.
Yeah, appreciate you having us.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. I appreciate it.
So I'm going to ask just some questions for context so that everybody's on the same page. Cryptocurrency was originally built on principles of anonymity and privacy. How is the landscape of crypto evolving today, and what forces these driving transformations?
No, I think as far as anonymity and privacy goes, you're seeing centralized exchanges that have the same KYC procedures and controls in place that legacy financial institutions have had. So it's not crypto, at least from a exchange and legitimate company kind of component of it. It's not that crypto companies are playing by different rules. So that when I hear like it's the Wild West, like Coinbase, Gemini, etc., have extensive KYC. The only obviously you're going to have to deal with like privacy coins and things that are off exchange and unhosted wallets and those components. But from a company standpoint, yeah, the KYC controls are still present.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it's more of like a pseudo anonymity that still believe out there that all cryptocurrency is anonymous, all transactions are anonymous, and they're not. Like you said, Coinbase, Crypto.com, Gemini, Kraken, all these companies, they use the same traditional KYC processes. Now, there's some that don't do it, absolutely. But I think what's happening in the changes when Bitcoin first came along, it was all about, hey, you can be anonymous, make a transaction, no one can control your transactions. So now where it's growing to a point to where you have to have those KYC protocols in place because it's becoming a mainstream way of transacting.
So, as these privacy paradigms shift, which protective features are proving the most resilient and which are becoming somewhat obsolete?
Ooh. I would say with the changing paradigm, the ones that are becoming, I guess, obsolete is more like in-person transactions and things like that. Because now everything is going to a more digital world. We do things online. Transactions move faster. We want faster transactions. And I think everyone else has to kind of keep up with that. I know we'll talk about how that works in the world of fraud in a little bit, but that's probably the biggest paradigm shift I think people are going to have to understand is traditional banking and financial institutions are going to have to go more into the digital world than they're going to have like physical banks and buildings to come in and do some of the work.
Yeah, no, we're going to dive a lot further into fraud and transaction monitoring, but those principles are going to remain steadfast from legacy to crypto to wherever the next iteration goes. Those things will be ever present. I think things that are becoming obsolete or at least harder to address is reactive fraud controls because crypto, you're not clawing the money back. Once you've sent it, it's gone. So yeah, reactive fraud controls don't necessarily work as well when it comes to the crypto world.
How have recent regulatory developments and the current political climate influenced cryptocurrency's journey toward its mainstream legitimacy?
Yeah, I think FinCEN's put out a lot of guidance and advisories on the crypto world. So there is now one for one typologies and one for one that like crypto SAR filings that FinCEN like notified the public about. So it's no longer trying to adapt to traditional typologies and scenarios and try to adapt those to crypto. It's now here, if you're a crypto company, here's what to look for. Here's your requirements. Here's your audit schedule and your examinations and all of that. And then you're seeing consent orders passed down to crypto companies, which is now adding further kind of best practices and how to's for the industry to adopt. So, yeah, there's a lot of guidance out there for how crypto companies should be able to navigate the regulatory landscape.
Yeah, and I think how it's changing as far as like the current political climate is it's becoming more acceptable to utilize cryptocurrency. As before, people were afraid to use it because they didn't understand it. They didn't understand the blockchain. They didn't understand that there are other cryptocurrencies other than Bitcoin, Ethereum. They thought, hey, everything's Bitcoin, and that's not the case. But I think because now politicians, business owners, the general public are becoming more comfortable utilizing cryptocurrency and getting a better understanding of it, especially with the younger generation now moving into those roles. It's going to become a mainstream thing in the future.
And just to add to that, something that having been the crypto world for 7, 8 years now, when I first got into it, it was a lot of us teaching people how crypto worked and how our business models were functioning and how our SAR filings, like what the information in the SAR filings actually meant, and all these different things. And over time, you've seen regulators and law enforcement and financial institutions get more crypto expertise and actually having in-house experts that can navigate this new landscape, or not even new landscape, just different landscape. So yeah, having the experts in-house at FinCEN and at the IRS and at all these regulators has helped a lot with kind of understanding the examinations and the review process for crypto.
So, now let's get into what we really came here to discuss, the fraud. What emerging fraud trends in cryptocurrency and in that ecosystem concern you as an expert in the field? What keeps you up at night?
Ooh, a lot. Being a fraud detective. So being a fraud and cybercrime detective in my day job, right? I am constantly getting more involved with cryptocurrency. As like now, I do crypto tracing probably every single day when it comes to investigating some of the scams that I deal with. And a lot of I'll say one of the major emerging trends, and I think we're probably going to talk about in a bit, is the use of like crypto ATMs, because there is some anonymous use when it comes to that, and there's a lack of understanding of how those machines work. So unfortunately, I deal with those every single day, and I think it's a lack of understanding by the people who are being victimized by these scammers. And that's the one fraud trend that I want to change as an expert in the field, is the understanding of how cryptocurrency works. And if someone understands it, they can know, like Seth was saying earlier, once that money goes, there's no reversing it. It's not like a typical fraud transaction where a bank can say, hey, I'm going to claw this money back and give it back to you. It's a whole nother process that goes to it. So I think it's building an understanding by people who utilize it, and then also by the people who investigate it and control the means as businesses of how to educate everyone else about that too.
Mark, I totally thought you were just going to say one phrase and that was it based on your LinkedIn. I thought you were just going to shout crypto ATMs, drop the mic, and walk away.
No, I mean, we'll talk about that. That's been at the forefront of my mind recently, just because I've seen how they've been utilized as a tool. Like, I don't necessarily think crypto ATMs are bad in themselves if they're utilized right. And I know we're talking about like regulations and everything else, but there's certain ways that we can use crypto ATMs in a way that will help people and not cause them to be victims by utilizing it. It's just like any other tool that we have. We have computers, we have cell phones, we have AI that we can use as a tool. Unfortunately, scammers use those to their advantage as well. And I think a crypto ATM is another one of those things that they're utilizing.
People are going to see the title of this webinar and I'm on it and hear crypto ATMs and be very confused why I wasn't the one that brought them up. But yeah, they're going to assume I just went back to my old job. But yeah, the thing that keeps me up the most at night, it's kept me up since I started in this industry, is as much effort as the compliance and the AML and the fraud teams are putting in to prevent all of these nefarious use cases, the criminals are getting as creative. There's more creativity and kind of like on the criminal side than there really is from the bank side. So every day when like you wake up and you see a new fraud scheme or a new way to layer funds through crypto, that just yeah, that's what's always going to keep I think everyone in this field up, is that at the end of the day there is a lot more criminals than there are people trying to stop them. On the like, so at the end, yeah, that's just kind of what we're dealing with.
So while I'm keeping you guys up at night, my next question is, how is this risk distributed across the retailers, the institutional players, the infrastructure providers? Like, where is the risk laying most?
I was going to lay this one up to Seth. I think you're more in that space.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, money, like as money moves from traditional financial institutions to crypto companies to the off ramps, etc., like everyone has an obligation to put in some oversight. So banks, if a elderly person's walking in and asking to withdraw all of the money from their account, there should be some onus to ask a few questions and understand what they're doing. And if it sounds like a fraudulent scheme, trying to provide the necessary information to potentially prevent it. There also needs to be on their side the AML and the fraud detection models. They're looking for this type of activity to gather that information. So that's from like the financial side. From the crypto side, crypto ATMs, exchanges, it's I mean the fraud typologies are pretty well established as far as the pig butchering and the romance scams and all of that. So there needs to be just detection and prevention there. And then from the off ramps, yeah, it's the same as any off ramp where if there's a lot of money moving in, you're not quite sure where it's coming from. You probably want to ask a few questions before you kind of let the account keep going. So yeah, every stage has their kind of their prerogative, I guess, best word for it, to prevent this.
Yeah, and I would say, to add on to that, I know you asked about retail users too. And I think something that retail users are going to have to learn is, before they want to implement it and use it as a way to make transactions or take payments, they need to understand how like a self-custodial wallet works and how to protect those, and maybe having multi-sig wallets and things like that. They need to understand how cryptocurrency works for, say, something like chargeback fraud or refund fraud, all those different things that they traditionally dealt with, that they have to understand that how will that be dealt with when a cryptocurrency transaction is something that they're dealing with. And if they just jump into it and say, hey, we're taking Bitcoin as payment, okay, that's great, but how are you protecting not only yourself, but your customers too? So I think the education on that part is going to be very important.
And real quick to build on just the education component, the consumer education is a huge thing that needs to kind of advance. When you get into, if you open a Fidelity account or Robinhood or whatever investment account, they teach you the risks of investment. They teach you have to go through training before you can do options trading and all of that. Crypto, it's very easy to get into, and like apps are getting much better at explaining the risks of crypto. But clearly there is some lapse still in knowledge because you have people falling for scams that can very easily be deterred through just basic knowledge of kind of crypto investments.
With that, we get to the most meaty piece of this conversation, crypto ATMs. What are the distinct vulnerabilities that these platforms are introducing, and how are malicious actors capitalizing from them?
The first is just prevalence. If you internal controls aside, so whatever a crypto ATM company has as far as fraud detection and prevention, EDD reviews, AML, aside from that, it's just the sheer prevalence of them in neighborhoods is going to lend themselves to nefarious use. So if there is, let's say, 10 ATMs or 10 ATM providers, each operating a different ATM within a 20-mile span, and I am a scammer trying to convince someone to send me 50 grand, if the limit is 5 grand to each of them, you now have the ability to have someone travel 20 miles and you get 50 grand within a day because they're just going to hit the limit of all of them. So just the sheer prevalence of operators and their kind of presence in a community is why they're so easy to be targeted for fraud.
And I completely agree with the amount. I can tell you right now, I've been deep diving into crypto ATMs over the past few months. And just in the United States, there's 31,000 crypto ATMs just in the US. And where I'm at, there's over 400 in my state, and most of them are within my county. And or a couple of the biggest vulnerabilities I see is, just like Seth was saying, you have so many different operators, and not the bigger ones, of course, they're complying with AML and SEC and BSA and all these different acts that they have to in order to mitigate fraud. But there are several that have not gotten up to speed when it comes to that. And they may have one person handling compliance or one person handling support because they're newer companies, and they have to be able to help mitigate some of the things that are happening too, and really get that information out as to how people can be victimized by utilizing their crypto ATM. And I also think partnerships could be a very big thing with crypto ATMs. Like, they should be able to partner with more compliance professionals, more law enforcement, to try to help stop individuals from utilizing these, or stop criminals from utilizing these to victimize people. And you're seeing some, I know Seth mentioned like the limit. If you have like a $5,000 limit, great. If you have a $50,000 limit, that makes it a little tougher when someone, drops their life savings into one of these. And malicious actors are capitalizing on these because they know that there's not much education around how these ATMs work. And if they can just direct someone to an ATM at a gas station or a smoke shop or wherever they're located, which is like right down the street, that person goes in there, drops the money, they're gone. They have no idea how it works, and then they're gone. Criminals know this. And they know that they can use money mules to help them move this money. They know that they can layer the money for money laundering purposes. And then once it's on the blockchain, whether it gets to another exchange or something like that, it can be hard to trace those funds. And law enforcement also needs to get on board too, understanding how search and seizure works. I try to say, as much as I want to go into an ATM and get that money back for a victim, I know I can't just open that ATM and take the money out of it. So they have to understand those laws too.
Yeah, well, just kind of to add on to kind of, they're in the community. Criminals know if they send someone there, money's going to be in their hands pretty quickly. The kind of the thing that builds on that is that the ease of use of crypto ATMs is both a value add, but then also has its negative consequences. So if you are talking to someone, you're trying to convince them to send you money, telling them, I need you to download an app, I need you to submit your ID, I need you to take a selfie, I need you to fund this account with transfers from your bank, I then need you to type in this ridiculous string of numbers and letters to send me money to my wallet. That is a big ask, and people are going to have time to ask questions, and it might just be, it's not worth it, I'll figure something else out, or I'll hang up the phone. As opposed to, I need you to go take $5,000 out of your bank. I need you to drive to this convenience store, and then I will send you a picture. And I just need you to scan that picture of that QR code, put that $5,000 into the ATM, and walk away. Yes, you have to drive. Yes, there is the actual like logistical items, but it's easier to understand when you have someone scared on the phone to just go to this place and put the money in, send it to whatever QR code I send you, and that's that.
Yeah, so I read through that story. That was actually a great story by them. That's probably one of the best stories that I've seen on crypto ATMs and how they work. And when I saw that, I mean, I posted about it right after I saw it. And ironically, just yesterday, that I had an employee at a store contact me. So I've been dealing with crypto ATMs for quite a bit, and I started leaving my contact information at some of these stores. And I would tell them like, "Hey, if you see someone who looks like they're possibly being scammed, just say something and contact me if you need assistance." And it just so happened this store employee contacted me yesterday and said, "Hey, I have someone here. I believe he's being scammed. He thinks he has a warrant for his arrest." And so I get on the phone with this person, and luckily he had not put any money in the machine. And he goes, "I have two people on the phone who are telling me that they're law enforcement and they're going to arrest me." And I go, "Hang up the phone." And he hung it up. I'm glad he hung it up. He didn't lose any money, but it was an education component where that one person that I had a conversation with that I left my business card said, "Hey, I think this is happening." And he stepped up and did something about it. And so it's that education component that can help prevent these from happening and stopping someone from losing their life savings. Because that guy said that's all the money he had left. He had never been arrested before, but criminals know this. They use that fear tactic. And this guy, I think he drove like 9 or 10 miles to get to the specific ATM. And criminals know that too. They know which ATMs they're learning, which crypto ATMs are not being monitored or which ones they're successful at. And they'll actually tell someone to go to a specific location because they know it's not monitored the way other ones may.
And that was, yeah, that was one of the kind of proud moments of running a AML and fraud program for a crypto ATM company. Was we tried to kind of get involved in some of these scams to better understand how they worked. So we would respond to the random text. We would answer the phone calls about warrants that we were getting ourselves. And we actually had a scammer tell us to not use our own ATM, which was, it was a good moment, but then kind of to answer the question, is it as easy as it sounds on CNN? Ours were, we added friction wherever we could to stop fraud. So it wasn't easy. We used to say if someone got scammed, they wanted to get scammed more than we wanted to prevent it, because at some point people are going to lie. They're going to think of creative ways to circumvent controls. But we had rotating questions. We had transaction freezes, transaction rejections, a lot of things that led to you talking to our fraud team before money got sent. So at some point, I guess the scammers found out and just started directing people away from us. Good from a fraud and risk component from an internal enterprise standpoint, but at the end of the day, we almost preferred people get stopped at us so we had the chance to prevent the fraud than them being sent somewhere else and just losing all their money. But yeah, that's just kind of the pattern we saw.
So, with all this, what I'm taking away is that education is really important. So, for a newcomer to the cryptocurrency space, what essential fraud what essential fraud prevention strategies would you recommend for both the individual and for the institution?
As far as education goes, and this is the best thing that'll prevent pig butchering and investment scams ever. Holding crypto is investing in crypto. That is that is how you invest primarily in crypto. Is you buy it and you hold on to it until it goes up in price. So if someone calls you saying, "I have the best investment platform and the best investment strategy and send all of your money here," that wouldn't make sense, because all they're going to do is trade crypto, and all you have to do is put it in a wallet on Coinbase and see where it goes. So yeah, that's what I always tell people. Like, if you want to invest in crypto, just buy crypto. You don't need someone else to do it for you.
Yeah, I think that's like a big takeaway. I see that quite a bit when it comes to the pig butchering scams, is that people just assume that because this person appears to be making a lot of money, that they'll just trust them with the money and send it over to them. And like, well, they made a bunch of money according to their Instagram and YouTube pages. So I trust them because they have this appearance of a great lifestyle that I want. And I think, like so saying, with the education component of it, is understanding how these scams happen, and social engineering and understanding how those things happen. And most of these scams all happen with the same method. The story is different, and it's like a formula. I call it a scam formula, and you have four components. You have hook, you have your story, you have your fear and urgency, and then you have your payment. And that's essentially how law enforcement imposter scams work with warrants, how the tech support scams work, how romance scams work, how investment scams work. They all have that same foundation of how this criminal is going to carry that out. So understanding that basic foundation and going, okay, this all sounds like that. I got a hook, I got a story, it's an emergency, it's got to happen now. Understanding that first for the individual, and even for businesses, because I see business employees fall for this as well, is understanding that's how it's happening. And then the other part for newcomers is protecting their information when it comes to their wallets or their private keys. Like, someone's not going to call and ask you for your password for your bank account the same way someone's not going to ask you for your seed phrases for your wallet. And if someone is asking for information, that's something that you should protect if you want to protect your account at all costs.
So we're coming towards the end, but I wanted to pose a question. Where do established fraud detection approaches remain effective? And where do we require entirely new frameworks? Like, where do we need to have these significant changes?
So I can come at it from the kind of the internal standpoint of as far as building a fraud detection program for a Bitcoin ATM company. We leveraged a lot of the same controls that every other institution, MoneyGram, Venmo, etc., had. The only thing we did was because of the instantaneous side of crypto, we had to do it before the transaction. We couldn't be reactive. So we had, like I said, rotating fraud questions, but they weren't designed to make someone feel like a victim and to have a gotcha moment. They were designed just to better understand kind of what the transaction was and then identify risk through that. So we always call it the stupid question we would ask is, if you are sending to your own wallet, what is the wallet? Name the app. And that would get a lot of fraud detection, like a lot of victims, because they just didn't know what app they were using because they just have a picture of a QR code. We also would use the same account freezes that you typically see. We would freeze transactions based on if it was being sent to a exchange only accessible in Africa, only accessible in Southeast Asia, because at the end of the day, if you are again sending to your own wallet and then you won't have access to the wallet in Africa or in Southeast Asia. So again, it was very common sense fraud controls that you see banks use all the time. No one, if you're saying a wire somewhere you probably shouldn't or somewhere that seems out of the norm, they'll call you. We did the same with crypto. So it's just things like that. And then the other thing I will say for at least a crypto ATM company, if you want to do fraud detection or fraud prevention, not detection, but if you want to prevent scams, you have to make the victims not feel like they're being targeted or challenged, because scam victims will dig their heels in to convince you that they're not. It's more of just breaking the story. So for instance, if it's a pig butchering website with an investment site, send them the 30 other websites that the scammers made that look identical and ask them why this scammer is created or why this investment broker has 30 unique sites. If it's a romance fraud, tell them, look at the wallet and tell them that there's a bunch of people saying to that wallet. So the guy might not be as faithful as you think. Things like that, where you're breaking the actual scam story. You're not challenging or making someone feel like a victim. And that goes a very long way in preventing these types of fraud.
And then I'll add from everything he just said, especially with KYC protocols and using those traditional things that banks use, I think crypto ATM companies and crypto businesses will have to incorporate. But I'll talk about it from an external standpoint, from an investigator standpoint, who's looking into these cases. A lot of investigators that I've spoken with who don't understand cryptocurrency are afraid when they hear the term cryptocurrency. And I want them to understand that cryptocurrency is just another vehicle to move money. So it's not crazy. The same way that they understand how traditional banking works with checking and savings accounts and investments accounts and checks, ACH payments, cryptocurrency is just another vehicle to move money. And if they look at it in that sense, it's not so scary. It goes, okay, someone took money, they put it into this wallet, aka an account, And then they started transferring money to other places. Don't be afraid to just look at it and go by that means. And the nice thing about cryptocurrency is you can look at it on a public ledger. So it's not like you have to do a subpoena to see where this wallet transaction went. You can actually sit there and train on how to follow the money. Now, you can also do subpoenas and legal requests to these companies to further help with that. But I think it's just not being afraid from an external point to try to understand cryptocurrency and try to learn about it. Now, I know there's like tracing tools that are used, and they can be very expensive sometimes for some places and agencies. And specifically from like a law enforcement perspective, which I have, my entire background in for the most part, agencies should not be afraid when they hear the term cryptocurrency and go, we don't understand it, so therefore we're not going to investigate this case. We can't trace it. We can't get your money back. And like, that's not the case. They should take it upon themselves to learn about it, to be able to help the person who got victimized.
So if I gave you guys a crystal ball, each of you just take it in your hands and decided not the winning lottery numbers, but what happens in crypto fraud in the next 18 months. Do you think we'd have or we will be significantly further in preventing it? And if not, why?
If I had a crystal ball, and I think we'd be further in preventing it, unfortunately, I don't think we'd be too more. I think we'll be further in trying to put in measures to prevent it, but I think the amount that will have happened in the 18 months will increase before we get a chance to start putting those things in place, because now people are starting to understand it a little more and they're getting more educated on it. But it takes time to adapt to start actually preventing it themselves and putting those measures in place. But I think the more people who understand it in the next 18 months, then after that, we'll be able to start putting reins on it. But in the next 18 months, while we're still really figuring it out and it's really becoming mainstream, it's going to increase, and it's going to be that hard 18 months where you're like, okay, this is going to suck for now, but by the time this is done, about this 18 months or 2 years, whatever it may be, we're going to start to get a handle on this, and we'll be able to slow things down.
Yeah, I kind of want to echo that. I think controls will be a lot more established. Expectations for what crypto companies can do will be a lot more well known. The fraud typologies, the detection methods, all of that will start moving more towards just established practices. With that being said, you've had romance scams forever. The scam itself hasn't really changed. It's just the mechanism for how the scammer gets the money. So if we haven't, I don't want to sound negative, but if we haven't been able to stop these investment frauds and these Nigerian prince scams and these romance scams and all of that since they started, I don't know how like a crypto company is going to do it any better than MoneyGram and Western Union and banks, etc. Like that, the typologies have been around forever. So I think they'll find the way to just keep them going. Unfortunately.
Well, I'm hoping that it does get better in the next 18 months, but it sounds like in about a year and a half, we'll be here having a very similar conversation about something very similar. And I couldn't think of two better people to do it with. So thank you both for your time, and I appreciate it. And hopefully, we've given some knowledge to our listeners about what happens in the crypto space and where we're going, especially in terms of fraud. So thank you.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marc, Seth, and Rabihah for your insights. As cryptocurrency continues to gain legitimacy, that means there will not only be new investment opportunities for legitimate customers, but new threat vectors for criminals as well. Indeed, the fraud detection playbook is truly changing, and flexibility in both approach and response should be paramount as the crypto world continues to evolve. Thank you as always for joining us for Clarity, powered by the Thomson Reuters Institute. You can follow or subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform, and don't forget to share with your colleagues and leave a 5-star review. For more data-driven analysis of today's professional services market and in-depth conversations with industry thought leaders, please visit us online at thomsonreuters.com/institute and follow us on LinkedIn under the Thomson Reuters Institute. Clarity is a production of Thomson Reuters, copyright Thomson Reuters 2025.